unpack a man whose personality is so magnetic he cannot carry credit cards. Please welcome Family Research Council President Tony Perkins.
Good morning. Well, how are you all doing this morning? Good. Well, it's a great day to be alive, isn't it? All right. Well, I'm really excited to be able to introduce our next speaker. It's not often that I get to introduce someone in the media who not only shares my values, but my love for God, guns, and Cracker Barrel. In that order. In fact, I have rocked in his authentic Cracker Barrel rocking chair in his office at the Fox News headquarters in New York City. Todd Starnes is the host of Fox News and Commentary, heard daily on Fox News Radio Network. Throughout his journalism career, Todd has covered a number of high-profile stories, taking him from Wall Street to the White House. You may be familiar with his website. If not, write this down. It's toddstarnes.com and is read by more than 2 million people each month because he carries some of the stories that you and I care about most. He is the author of 2 books. They popped my hood and found gravy on the dipstick. It became a bestseller. It was a collection of humorous and inspirational stories from his open heart surgery back in 2004. His second book is Dispatches from a Bitter America, and it's on sale back there at our book table. In fact, he'll be doing a signing at the break. The book is a collection of essays on the culture war, detailing how President Obama has declared war on the values that has made our country great. In his spare time, Todd is active in his church. He plays golf. He also follows SEC football and eats barbecue. Welcome, my good friend, Todd Starnes.
Wow. Well, thank you very much. Thank you. It is so good to be here. And just as a show of applause, and if you want to hoot or holler or say amen, I'm just kind of curious about something. How many folks here listen to or watch Fox News Channel? Anybody? Yes, we are among God's people today. And if, in fact, someone you're sitting next to listens to one of the other networks, we will have a moment of intercessory prayer. And our Pentecostal brethren will be doing a laying on of hands a little bit later. So, look, let's be honest. When you hear the phrase network news reporter, Jesus is not exactly the first word that pops into your mind. But I am a native Southerner, and I was baptized and accepted Christ when I was 13 years old, baptized in a little pond in North Mississippi in a place called Byhalia. And it is a joy to be here with you, to share fellowship with brothers and sisters in the Lord and people who care about American values. As Tony said, I am a Southerner. I like my tea sweet, my chicken fried, and my biscuits buttered. And I come from a place where the only good pork butt is a smoked pork butt. And folks, I don't know about you guys, but here lately, I just kind of feel like I'm a Duck Dynasty guy living in a Miley Cyrus world, you know? I'm one of those people that President Obama calls a bitter American, somebody who clings to their guns and their Bibles. Well, Mr. President, I'm here to tell you something. I cling to my guns and my Bible because I'm afraid you're going to take them away. And I'm proud to call myself, as I write in my book, Dispatches from Bitter America, I'm proud to call myself a gun-toting, Bible-clinging, chicken-eating son of a Baptist. I want you to know something this morning. You have a friend at the Fox News corner of the world. I tell American stories. I tell our stories. Stories about people of faith who are struggling to raise families in a very secular nation. So I want you to know that when you read my stories, when you listen to me on the radio, I want you to know that I cover stories that matter to you. And that is something that I've committed to do, and I'm so honored and so grateful and blessed that Fox allows me the platform and the opportunity to do just that. Now, before I begin my prepared remarks, I want to say a word or two to the president, because I know he's listening, or at least the NSA is, to my comments this morning. First of all, when last week I came down to Washington, they told me I was going to be outside the World War II Memorial, which was shut down to our brave fighting men and women of that generation. So in addition to packing my microphone and my reporter's pad, I also threw a pair of wire cutters in my suitcase. And I told my editors at Fox I was prepared to engage in a little civil disobedience if need be while I was down there at the World War II Memorial. But fortunately, there were a bunch of lawmakers like Louis Gohmert and Michelle Bachmann and Ted Cruz. And I said, Senators and Congressmen, Congresswoman Bachmann, if you need to borrow my wire cutters, just let me know. And Congressman Gohmert, he opened up his jacket. He says, brought my own. So those are the kind of folks that the good people of Texas are sending to Washington, and I think we need a lot more like them. So here's my message to the president. You may spy on our telephone lines. You may demand to know the names of the people that attend our churches. You may demand to know the content of our prayers. But folks, we will not be bullied. We will not be silenced. They can do whatever they want to, but I got to tell you something. We don't bow down to the Democratic donkey, and we don't bow down to the Republican elephant. We bow down to the Lion of Judah, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Now you guys know why I keep getting audited. It's terrible, terrible. I want to talk to you about some of the stories that we've been covering at Fox News, because other networks, they don't cover these stories. They don't care about this kind of stuff. But I got to tell you something, folks. We are living in a very dangerous time in American history. We are living in difficult days. Anti-Christian bigotry is everywhere. And we need to call it what it is, anti-Christian bigotry. We'll be talking a little bit later, and I hope you attend this panel discussion on what they're doing in our military right now. But Obama's Pentagon is separating the military from the people. And they're teaching and they're training our fighting men and women that organizations like the Family Research Council, like American Family Association, that those groups are domestic hate groups. Just last night in my hotel room, I received an email from one of our soldiers serving in the Army, and he actually took a photograph of a slideshow presentation that was delivered on Thursday. On the screen was a picture of the American Family Association, and in this screen, they labeled the American Family Association as a domestic American hate group, alongside the Ku Klux Klan and all these other legitimate hate groups. This is what's happening in our armed forces. Our fighting men and women receive training to teach them that Catholics and evangelical Christians are extremist. We know that crosses have been removed from chapels on military bases. We know that Bibles have been banned at Walter Reed Medical Center, but only after we reported on the story and after you folks raised an uproar, they changed that policy. And then just last week, we got word that, this one just makes me so angry. We got word that the Obama administration furloughed 50 Catholic priests from the military. They determined that these priests were non-essential personnel. Friends, I'm a Southern Baptist, but you know what? When we got word of that, I became a Catholic. And I stand alongside my Catholic brothers and sisters in the Lord and say, we will not tolerate anti-Christian bigotry. It is unacceptable in the United States of America. And then we hear stories like Pastor Saeed Abedini, our president who travels across the globe apologizing for the United States of America, and yet he cannot utter the words Saeed Abedini from his lips. This American pastor at this very moment languishes in one of Iran's most notorious prisons. And yet, what is our president doing about it? Why isn't he picking up the phone and talking to his new BFF, best friends forever, the Iranian president? And yet, at this very moment, an American pastor sits in a Muslim country's jail, and we do nothing about it. And then there's a story I told about the Romiki family, a homeschooling family from Germany, and I want to say as a caveat, I love homeschooling families. I tell your stories at the Fox News Corner of the world as well, and I say thank you for what you're doing, raising young men and women who love and cherish and are willing to defend the values that have made this country the greatest on the face of the earth. Thank you. But here we have an administration that allows anybody to come across the southernmost border of these United States. As a matter of fact, the only thing that's not closed during this furlough and during this government shutdown is our borders. Come on in. And yet, this administration is fighting to have this family that came here legally, they want them deported because they are Christian homeschoolers, and they want them sent back to Germany. I tell those stories. One of the most heartbreaking stories I told was about a group of middle school young people from a Christian school in Arizona. Every year they take a trip to the nation's capital. And these young 12 and 13-year-old boys and girls were gathered outside the Supreme Court on that plaza, and they joined hands and they formed a circle. And these little precious boys and girls, they prayed for their leaders. They prayed for their president and their vice president. And in the middle of their prayers, a Capitol Hill police officer came and ordered them to stop. Others came and they told these young people they were breaking the law, that they weren't allowed to pray on the plaza of the Supreme Court. So let me tell you what happened. The teacher gathered up her boys and girls, and they gathered on a sidewalk. And some of the students literally had to stand in a gutter, but they prayed. This is happening in the United States of America, friends. I want to close my remarks by telling you some stories and sharing some good news, because I know that things do appear to be grim, but I believe that God is raising up a new generation that is unafraid and unapologetic, and they are willing to take a stand for their religious rights. We are seeing the creation of a new generation of what I believe will be Billy Grahams and Billy Sundays. There's a great, I'm a huge fan of Christian music, and if you ever come by my office at the Fox News Corner of the world, I'm always playing either the Gaither homecoming music or some contemporary Christian music. People don't know what's going on in my office. But one of my favorite artists is Stephen Curtis Chapman. He wrote a song, or he sings a song that I believe is appropriate for this hour in our nation's history. Oh, may all who come behind us find us faithful. May the fire of our devotion light their ways. May the footprints that we leave lead them to believe. That the lives we live inspire them to obey. Oh, may all who come behind us find us faithful. When I hear that song, I think about young people like Jake Naiman, a 17-year-old Eagle Scout from Southern California. Jake, just last year, was with his high school newspaper staff at a national newspaper convention in Minneapolis. Jake and his classmates were sitting on the front row when all of a sudden the speaker, a man by the name of Dan Savage, President Obama's anti-bullying czar, got up there and started ridiculing Christians. And then he started cursing the Bible. And young Jake Naiman, there he was on the front row. And Jake, in front of thousands of other teenagers, stood up and he walked out. And Jake didn't turn around as the speaker began to heckle. This grown man began to heckle and curse this Christian young man as he walked out in defiance. Jake did not turn around. But you know what would have happened if Jake would have turned around? Do you know what he would have seen? He would have seen his classmates who saw what Jake did, and one by one they got up and they walked out. Young girls were weeping and crying, and that grown man was heckling those Christian boys and girls, but they stood their ground. They refused to sit there and to listen to this man ridiculing their faith. Jake Naaman took a stand. Jake Naaman, his future children and grandchildren will know that he was found faithful that day. And I think of people like Audrey Jarvis. I told her story. Audrey is here today. You will get to meet her. She's a student at Sonoma State, a devout Christian, a devout follower of the Lord, and she wears a cross. And she was ordered by someone at her school to remove that cross because people might find it offensive. Well, guess what? That cross is still around Audrey's neck because she took a stand. She was found faithful. And then there's the story of Roy Costner. And boy, this one really just hits my heart because like Roy, he's a Southerner. I'm a Southerner. Roy grew up out in the Carolinas. And just this past year, you might have heard his story. Roy was selected as the valedictorian, the top of his class, and he's a follower of Jesus. Roy wanted to talk about Jesus in his graduation speech, but they wouldn't let him. And so he had to create a prepared text that had been vetted. But you know what happened? This is exciting. Roy said, Mr. Starnes, I don't know what it was, but I felt a stirring in my soul. And it came time to deliver that speech, and guess what happened? Oh, Roy, he tore up that speech. And he shared the speech that God laid on his heart to speak. Roy Costner took a stand. And so, my fellow brothers and sisters in Christ, my fellow countrymen gathered in this room, I want to ask you a question. Are you willing to take a stand? Right here and right now. Who among us is willing to stand up and say, I am going to stand up for religious rights in the United States of America? Who among you is willing to say we are still one nation under God? No matter what they tell us in Hollywood, no matter what they tell us on the evening news, no matter what they tell us at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, we are still one nation under God. Sweet mercy, that's a lot of folks. In closing, I want to read just a brief paragraph from my book, Dispatches from Bitter America. And I hope to be able to shake your hands. And even if you don't buy my book, I want you to come by and shake my hand and say hello. Just a couple of, just maybe a mile or so from here, there's a beautiful monument, the Washington Monument. And on the capstone is a saying, is a phrase, Laus Deo, praise be to God. And when morning's first light rises across the eastern seaboard, the first rays of sunlight hit that capstone before it touches anything else in the District of Columbia. It illuminates that phrase from the architect, praise be to God. And I want to read these words in closing. Secular humanists may one day be successful in the religious cleansing of America. There may come a time when Christian values will be banished from the marketplace of ideas and expelled from our public schools. On the horizon, a day fast approaches when Americans could pay a price for following the teachings of Jesus Christ. And while the winds of change may sweep across the nation's capital, there stands a beacon of hope, a reminder that this nation of immigrants was built not on sinking sand, but on a firm foundation girded by Almighty God. And unless somebody has a really tall ladder and a really big blowtorch, the first rays of morning light will shine down upon these United States, illuminating an eternal truth and a grateful nation's prayer. Praise be to God. Thank you very much. Thank you.